Hello, this is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. There was a daring escape of Venezuelan opposition leaders from the Argentine embassy in Caracas. This effort was led by María Corina Machado and several other opposition leaders in coordination with the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Eric, this is an amazing story. And I thought this would be a real treat for Off Leash viewers to get your insights of someone who has overseen, run operations like this. But basically, we have these opposition leaders were imprisoned. They were trapped in the Argentine embassy for 1 year. And the dictator Maduro left the country. He went to Victory Day celebrations in Moscow, and in the dark of night, this operation called Guacamaya, Operation Guacamaya, was used to free these opposition leaders from basic imprisonment in the embassy. Eric, I'm really dying to get your perspective and your insights about an operation like this, how it was planned and played out. And I know our viewers are in for a treat getting your insights about it.
Well, congrats to the opposition for pulling off a great exfil. Congrats and thank you to Argentina for giving them sanctuary and standing with freedom for that long. And it speaks to additional vulnerabilities of the regime. It is not the easiest place. The Argentine embassy, of course, in Caracas. Caracas is up on the side of a mountain, effectively in a bowl, about 3,000 feet above sea level, with only a couple roads that get from Caracas to the sea. So not only do they have to get them out of the embassy, they had to get them, I would imagine, to the sea, because all the land routes to Colombia are heavily patrolled and a lot of checkpoints. So a lot of variables to get through, and obviously they did successfully. And it is great to see a victory like that, all while Maduro slumps off to I would say the gallery of fools that were gathering in Moscow with dignitaries like the dictator from Burkina Faso, from Cuba, from Nicaragua, and all the other places that are not so great to their citizens.
Yeah, well, this just struck me as absolutely fascinating. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had commented about it and basically announced the successful extraction of these prisoners, really, to the United States. So walk us through an operation like that. They clearly waited till Maduro was out of the country. He had gone to Moscow for Victory Day celebration. So clearly the military in Venezuela had been swarming this embassy for a full year. It's amazing that they could have escaped at all, but the military must have been asleep at the switch when Maduro left the country, I assume, no?
It's, there's an old special boat service saying, not by strength, by guile. And so I would say a healthy amount of guile and probably not a small amount of cash made that possible to pay off whatever guards, whatever checkpoints they might have encountered to buy or bluff or bullshit their way through. It worked. And again, I would imagine they went out by sea because the land borders are mighty difficult, and trying to bring an aircraft in also too many variables. So in a car, probably in a van, moving 5 people is much harder than moving 1, because 1 you can put in a trunk. So yes, it's a great day for them, a great day for the opposition, and it speaks to the ongoing even struggle of ideas and words, even in Washington, that you can still see the Chevron paid agents buying article space, buying lobbying advocacy saying, well, if U.S. operators aren't operating their facilities in Venezuela, you're just turning it over to the Chinese. That's actually not the case, because the Maduro regime has so abused even other foreign investors like the Russians or the Chinese. They're not in any hurry to come back and operate those fields. So it's amazing to see the battlefield that is Washington of ideas and money lobbying. I've been seeing some random so-called conservative influencers pop up writing editorials, picking and mirroring the talking points of the PR agent used by Maduro. So it's the older I get, the more I realize there's really nothing new in the world, and the same kind of nonsense you see playing out in of corruption and money and pay-to-say advocacy still exists in the United States as well.
Yeah, there has been a spike in sort of conservative commentary in recent weeks about that as Chevron is leaving the country under the directives set by the White House, that China will fill the void. So that's very, very helpful. I think, even for Off Leash viewers, I don't think people have a keen understanding of why that's not the case, why that's not true.
No, look, Maduro has ruined almost every area of the economy except the drug production and export part. It is not a friendly place to do business. It is the worst of corruption, gangster capitalism. And I think the Trump administration was right to turn the spigot off on all the money that Chevron and Sergeant Oil was paying to Venezuela. And again, I think the Trump administration is just trying to make the case and make an example to say, leave. It's time to go. Take the money, go somewhere else, but just stop oppressing your people. I don't know if that amount of sanction pressure is going to work. So there, of course, there's been a lot of effective work done on the oil front. There's about a third of the economy is drugs, a third of it is gold, and a third of it is oil. The gold piece largely flows to Turkey, so much so that Turkey built a refinery inside the customs area of Istanbul airport, so that jet after jet hauling gold, dory bars, effectively illegally and in violation of sanctions, gold is leaving Venezuela, flying to Turkey, and getting monetized. That has become a huge financial lifeline for the Maduro regime. And then obviously the other third of that is the drug part. There's 34 drug production processing facilities. And it's not like you see in Colombia where it's actually been illegal. In the case of Venezuela, it's largely run by the military, and they are effectively factories, like a commercial facility. It's not some jungle lab. But 34 of those facilities spread across Venezuela of, by, and for the Venezuelan military, which serves as the processor and exporter of those narcotics, largely going to the United States and some going to Europe as well.
So clearly, there are three elements to their economy. And if oil gets squeezed, as the administration is doing, then Maduro has to rely more so on the other elements of the economy, like you're saying, drugs, gold. I assume, Eric, with what you just described in terms of their being able to monetize their gold holdings, that there's no way to shut that down without the full cooperation of Turkey, correct?
I think there's maybe sanctions coming against Turkey. Turkey is sitting, of course, at the middle between Asia and Europe, at the mouth of the Black Sea. And so they've inserted themselves into a lot of things that they traditionally had not done, whether they're significantly operating in Somalia and Libya, claiming pretty much the entire floor seabed of the Mediterranean as sovereign Ottoman Turkish territory, having just driven the Assad regime out of Syria and placing a very Sunni friendly, not just friendly, a former ISIS guy that they gave a nice suit to and gave, shaved off his jihadi beard. So Turkey is a complex middleman in a lot of these areas. Perhaps a air interdiction or other things that can pressurize Turkey with, because Turkey's economy is still in awful shape.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and it's interesting too, because Trump has put a lot of emphasis on secondary tariffs and non-monetary tariffs that he's leveraging in his efforts to realign the American economy and get our trade deficit reduced. So we'll see what leverage he's got there with a country like Turkey at this point. Though they're a NATO ally, they've been working against our interests in many ways. But let me go back.
Let me just pause you there, Mark. 1 sec. Turkey should not continue to be a member of NATO. That was all. NATO was all about countering the Soviet Union. Okay, fine. The Soviet Union ceased to exist in 1991. NATO was all about trying to secure that eastern flank of Europe and to have control by an ally of the Dardanelles and the Bosporus at the mouth of the Black Sea. But as you go back in history, for hundreds of years, Turkey has always been an opponent of Russia. And I don't think you'd have the nonsense that Turkey's been pulling, flooding Europe with all kinds of illegal migrants, with a lot of the other support of radical Sunni elements in various parts of the Middle East. If they did not have that somewhat them, putting them off on their own would be, I think, a positive. The real master switch in all this is if there is a secular, sane regime that somehow returns in Iran. If you get rid of the mullahs, you have 90 million people, very hardworking, natural resources, the ability to grow all kinds of crops, meaning they have rain and water. And you have Iran, Persia, effectively returning to its historical norm as a significant leader, as the dominant player in the Middle East.
We're going back to the Venezuelan opposition. This is much more, I think, than a moral victory for them and Maria Machado. Let me quote from one of the escapees, Gonzalez Moreno, who described the conditions that they were living under, the five opposition leaders in the Argentinian embassy, where he said snipers lurked in the shadows, drones patrolled the skies, and guards with trained dogs evoked scenes reminiscent of Nazi concentration camps. He said, food was scarce, but more unbearable than hunger was the silence, broken only by the screams of agents, the growling of dogs, and the buzzing of their drones. They wanted fear to devour us, to make us abandon our struggle, to betray Maria Corina, Edmundo, and the people who cried out for us from the streets. The embassy, meant to be a bastion of sovereignty, became a theater of despair. The days stretched into eternity without electricity. We lived by candlelight without water. We feared the day there'd be none left. This is pretty powerful words from an escapee who just spent a year in what he describes as a prison in the Argentinian embassy.
Sure. I would imagine that the Argentine embassy is not a huge facility. And of course, it's a functioning outpost of the Argentine government. And good on Milei for having the moral courage to say, yes, you can take sanctuary here, and to stand up against the Maduro cartel. Sure, all the kind of intimidation, misery factors, I'm sure, were applied to those folks. And I'm yet again, I'm sure they were reminded of why they choose freedom and why some things are worth fighting for. And I think it's great to also remember that it's a great reminder that elections have consequences, because under a Peronista socialist government in Argentina, you never would have had that kind of support for freedom, nor would you be seeing the kind of reforms that are very much happening in Argentina every day now. So, and I'm sure we could only hope that a Milei figure comes to power in Venezuela.
Yeah, well, let's exit on this, Eric, because I think you're giving us amazing insights to what that must have been like with an escape of this sort. Let's look ahead. The opposition obviously had a moral victory. Their leaders are now safely in the United States. Even Maria Machado's mother was taken out of the country while Maduro was over in Moscow. Do you think the Trump administration is playing the long game here with Maduro's grip on power? Clearly, Marco Rubio is very, very dedicated to see a regime change in Venezuela, as Donald Trump is. But is this a long game for them?
Well, look, means and sanctions are not going to be enough to push a gang off of their pedestal, off their throne. And so that will take covert action, convincing that Maduro and his gang will have more happiness and more longevity if they leave than if they stay. And so, yes, that requires covert action. That requires force, and we'll see where that force comes from.
Well, this has been great. Operation Guacamaya was a huge success. 5 opposition leaders were provided escape from the Argentinian embassy in Venezuela. They are now safely in the United States. Only here on Off Leash you're going to get this kind of insight and connecting the dots across the world as well. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, the Unplugged phone, by going to unplugged.com/offleash and get your phone today. For Off Leash with Eric Prince, I'm Mark Serrano. Thanks for joining.